yet again the lake and Weirsdale, and it's partly cloudy skies with a chance of precipitation at 30%. It's currently 86 degrees outside, and it's a beautiful day, as I can say. But you know what? Today we're talking to a very, very new friend and an evolving friend of mine, someone who I have been friends with on Facebook. We share mutual friends, and I took a chance to reach out to him because I admire the work he's done over the course of his almost 40 years when you combine everything between the fire service and his outside activities from there on. And he's a man who comes from Chicago, which is by far the greatest city in the world. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And yet he's one of the few people, aside from my father, who we fight with bitterly over this, that I can have a dialogue with without being sick to my stomach when talking about the Cubs and the White Sox. And today we welcome our friend and our new guest, and hopefully a returning guest, Chief Steve Chikoritas. How are you, Chief? Or Chikoritas. My God, I did it wrong all of a sudden. I can't believe I said Chikoritas. Good Lord have mercy. I promised I wouldn't do that.
Chikoritas.
Chikoritas. You got to tell me the origin of that name. I can't believe I butchered your name on the first go-around. See, and we're not cutting that. I don't do that. I can't do that to you. How are you, my friend?
Great, pal. It's an Ellis Island name. My grandfather came over from Greece many years ago, over 100 years ago, and I'm Greek, Irish, English, German. I got a whole bunch, but you can call me anything you want.
Well, you know, I'll call you Chief, but I know a lot of people call you Chick, which is a great name as well.
Chick is better.
Well, we can do Chick then. I'll call you Chick throughout the course of the interview. Again, you know, it's just such an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean, you have given, let's see here, 36 years to the CFD. You came in 1979, and you built a tremendous career around that. And you didn't just build a career, you built an afterlife in a sense for yourself, because you started teaching, you got engaged at the Chicago Fire Academy, you started teaching outside of the academy as well. You then got involved in movies about 10 years into your career with Backdraft and Backdraft 2, which we'll get into later. And then from there, Chicago Fire. And these are all just amazing accomplishments in your life. And ninth season filming now. And as we talked about, you've got a pretty strong schedule. You are well, let's see, this is your last of days off. So basically Sunday through Thursday, you're going to be back to work in the studio again, eh?
That's true. Yeah, I stay busy. It's worked out really nice. 2 jobs that I completely love, and I would never tell them, but I would do it for free. That's how much I enjoy them. So that's how I felt about the fire service for 36 years, and I still consider myself part of the fire service, you know, with teaching and everything. And now I have the film industry, which I stay busy.
Well, what a blessing to be able to do that. It's an amazing opportunity to work on such a great show. 2 wonderful movies, a movie of my generation, Backdraft itself. I mean, I remember seeing it in 91 in the theaters, and it lit up my world. And, you know, it was my hometown, number one. You know, my grandfathers were North Riverside volunteer firemen back in the 50s and 60s. So it wasn't that far from them, even, because if I'm not mistaken, it was filmed out in Oak Park, in part, correct?
A little bit, yes.
A little bit in Oak Park, so that's not too far from there.
No.
And the scenescape, the Frank Lloyd Wright homes in that area, and the history of that architecture. I mean, it was just truly Chicago-centric, that movie. And just seeing all of it evolve and the storyline associated with it, I got to tell you, it was one of the most amazing movies I had ever seen at that age. I was 14, I believe, when that movie came out.
You know, Jace, over the years, I met a lot of, in my teaching and my travel all over the world, I've met a lot of firefighters that said they became firefighters because of that movie.
Yeah.
So it was made just for entertainment. It wasn't made as a training film, but that's the good part of that movie. And now my current television show is same thing. Now I'm running into younger firefighters that became firefighters because of Chicago Fire. You know, so it's a good kind of a side benefit out of it.
It's no easy feat to create such a show. I mean, when you think about the attention to detail that goes into making a period piece or an episode like Chicago Fire per se, I mean, there's all sorts of hazards. There's all sorts of potentials, and you're putting actors in gear and getting them engaged in firefighting activities. And I remember watching a video, I think it was made in 2015, and it was right around the 101st episode where the news came in and they were able to do an observational, time period or moment with you guys. And they filmed, some of the people there getting into gear, wearing the air packs, talking about what it takes. That's, when you put people who are not trained to do this work into that line of work, it's an amazing feat to accomplish. And I know that there's probably redundancies built in 110% over, just to make sure they're safe.
Yeah, there is. And with actors, I mean, they have to undergo training, a mini fire academy, if you would. Like, we condensed things before we started filming to about a 1 week fire academy where usually you have the luxury of teaching new firefighters a lot about an SCBA before they're actually breathing one in a smoke room. For the firefighters, it would be like by noon of the first day, they were in a burn room with the tank on their back. So we had to speed up the learning process and just get them acclimated, not to be firefighters, but to be able to look like firefighters.
Yeah, and get the job done. And over the course of the years, they've done a phenomenal job replicating that effort every episode. No ifs, ands, or buts. But let's digress from there and let's go into the meat and potatoes, because we can talk about Chicago Fire for sure, but there's a history with you that is important. And it's very, very rare. I get to talk to, Gary Ludwig is one, you're another, and there are a handful of people that haven't been on the show that can say, hey, look, 36, 40, 43 years in the service, and this is the experience from day one to, day I retire. And you came into the academy with a group of friends that you stayed lifelong friends with in 79, September of 79, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
What was the air like in Chicago? What was the period like in Chicago in that time frame?
In my mind, it really hasn't changed. I mean, I watched the cities evolve, the fire service has evolved, our equipment has changed, but the basic type of people that are still attracted to the fire service, that never changes. That
Mm-hmm.
comes from the heart. So like any new recruit, like now our academy is 6 months. Back then it was three months, and then they throw you out in the field, and then
Mm-hmm.
you continue training once you're out there. But for 3 months, you're meeting new friends. You're so damn excited to be there. And uh, it was a job that, Jace, I didn't even know about the fire service until months before that. I was actually looking for an action job, and I went and took the Chicago police test. And then I had a roofing business,
Yeah.
and we had landed. I was paying my bills, getting through college, going to school nights, putting roofs on in the daytime. And we're roofing in a town of Bedford Park, one of our suburbs, not far from where I live, on a
Yeah, it's
south
familiar.
side of Chicago.
Yep.
And they have an excellent fire department. But we're on a factory on a beautiful summer day, probably the biggest job that I had ever sold to that date, probably in my life. So I was happy to be working there. I had a crew of about 12 roofers working for me, and one was on the ground. And in the middle of the day, there's this tremendous explosion that knocked some of my guys off their feet.
Mm-hmm.
We had no idea what it was. I run to the side to check on my guy with a tar kettle and propane tanks, and it was nothing. He's standing there with his arms out like he doesn't know. And now I'm looking now, black smoke is starting to pour through the vents in the roof. And while I'm looking at my ground man and all the guys are gathered around me, the doors fly open, and factory workers, office girls, everybody is running, not jogging. They're sprinting away from this building.
Oh.
I would find out later that at least one person died, and there was a couple other injuries that were pretty severe. I don't really know how they made out of it, but people were fleeing for their life, and we're standing there like idiots on the edge of the roof watching. And this younger office girl, she stopped. She was kicking off her high heels so she could sprint, and she sees us standing there like idiots, and she waves and she says, "Get off of there, run!" So I look at the guys. I said, "I guess we should go." So they probably ran 3 blocks. Me and my crew probably ran about a half a block away. They had just been, blasted inside. So I'm sure they couldn't run far enough or fast enough. We go about a half a block away, and I'm looking at the smoke is increasing from this building, and I heard another little explosion. Then I hear the sirens, and then I see the lights, and here comes Bedford Park Fire Department, and they're masking up and going into what we just ran away from.
Yeah.
And I immediately, within the next few days, I went and signed up for the Chicago test. And luckily, there was one coming up soon. And luckily, I landed in the first class. And, a
The
few
rest
months
is
later,
history.
6 months later, I'm in the fire academy.
You were going to school to be an engineer, if I remember correctly. So you definitely like
I
building,
was.
creating, and fixing, and you're definitely minded in that mind. You're geared in that mindset. No ifs, ands, or buts. But that obviously changed everything that one day on that roof. You decided, no, I'm thinking this is where I want to be with the action jobs. So you left college, or did you finish everything?
I just shifted majors. I
Okay.
ended up graduating with a fire service, fire science degree,
Yeah.
and a little business degree instead of engineering. But not a regret in my life.
The early days of three-quarter coats, hip boots, and probably leather helmets back then, and that was still in existence up till recent 20 25 years ago in some towns inside of Chicago. They were still using that level of gear. I think it was in the late 90s. I was up there visiting before my grandmother had passed. Maybe it was the early 90s actually, and they were still wearing three-quarter coats and boots and helmets. And I thought that was the most amazing gear set a firefighter could ever wear. And I think Chicago, even though other departments across the nation, wore it, I think Chicago wore it best. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Well, we were my rescue squad company were one of the first in the certainly in the area, and one of the first in the country to test out bunker gear. And we really liked the fact that we could go deeper and
Yeah.
farther into the fire and make it through the situation, the heat situations to get closer to trapped victims. But it was probably cost effective and politics. The reasons why Chicago was one of the last major cities to change over. So for half of my career, that's what I was in with the 3/4 coats and the rubber boots.
Yeah, my good friend Kevin Schultz is, I think, one of the representatives, works out of the academy and helps supply the Chicago Fire Department with their gear. He's a solid dude, works locally as well. And he comes in at 4 in the morning, he tells me, and starts the day off there. And he'll end up at the firehouse in his community, during the rest of the day. When it comes down to it, it's not an easy feat to dress all the firefighters inside the city, I imagine.
It's 4,800 of us. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a huge department, and I remember there was a transition. There have been several transitions. I mean, there are some really notable moments inside of the City of Chicago Fire Department. I think the snorkel truck was one of the accomplishments of the CFD. It was the first that created the truck, if I'm not mistaken, that put it out there on the market.
That's correct. Our Commissioner Quinn uh, seen cherry pickers working for utility companies and incorporated, put a hose on it and tested it out, and right away seen, how it could be a tool for the fire service.
And they're still using them today, aren't they?
We are.
That's an amazing thing. We have a truck similar to that called the Bronto that we use in Florida. A couple of departments are using them
Very
now.
familiar.
Oh yeah, very interesting truck, just the design itself. And it kind of resembles the snorkel in the way, only it has the basket where the snorkel doesn't per se. But, just firefighting in Chicago, I mean, compared to what we do here in Florida, I mean, you guys have building construction like no other. And you touched on it earlier about when you transitioned into the new gear, it allowed you guys to go deeper into the buildings and do more. But even you as an instructor, I think, realized there was a caveat to that as well. And there had to be a change in the training mindset in Chicago.
Oh, absolutely. We went from it was a big thing when you add gear, when you add hoods and you add bunker gear and replace the pull-up rubber boots to protective gear. You can survive a flashover for a longer amount of time, but it's still roughly around 11 seconds.
Mhm.
But you're more likely to get Pearl Harbored, if you will, or surprised with a flashover uh, because you're encapsulated and you're not feeling it. So we have to see it. We have to utilize different senses where we literally used to feel the heat change on our ears, and
I
we
was gonna
would know when it was time to duck low and back out.
I was gonna say SCBAs were probably around, but not readily used when you came into the fire service, I imagine.
When I came on, each apparatus had one SCBA, and it was kept in a back compartment in a case. And
And never touched.
it was to be used for those tough fires, Jace.
Tough. You tell me what Chicago fire isn't tough, okay? Because I
So
can't tell you of one that would be just simple room and contents in most cases, you know?
really early in my career, we had a tough basement fire, and the
Yeah.
captain had me throw on that newfangled SCBA thing, and one of the other young guys from another company and I dragged a hose line down there and put the fire out. It was the only way you were going to make this particular basement.
Yeah.
And we come out and we're feeling kind of good about ourselves. And the captain was trying to brag on us. And the older guy said, yeah, but they used that thing on their back. You know, it was like, it was a new toy. You know, people didn't know how to take it at first.
Yeah, it was not met with wide appreciation and love, I imagine, at first. Like, no, we're smoke eaters. We don't do this. We're not wearing this thing. It's a hindrance if it's anything.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, go
it was
ahead. You were saying.
just shortly after that. Then we had one for each firefighter, and then next thing it was a mandatory mask rule, and it was very quickly where everybody could appreciate, you know, that we could definitely make a difference and save lives with it.
You know, I've interviewed different members of the smoke diver community. I don't know if you're familiar with the smoke diver community,
I,
the programs.
I taught it in the early stages. Yes.
Outstanding, outstanding. You were out at the Illinois Institute or Illinois Fire Academy, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
IFSI, yeah.
So I talked to them, and you know, the creation of the program was, hey, we've got this new piece of equipment. We got to figure out what we can and can't do with it. You know, we got to know what its limitations are. We got to know how we can change out bottles on the fly. We got to know how to work with it, function with it. What do we do if we get trapped? It's our only means of life. I mean, such an amazing introduction of such a valuable piece of equipment, and the smoke diver programs have evolved all pretty much consecutively since their birthing, you know, their creation. You know, it's amazing what they do with that program, what they do today, and the limits they put people to, and show how they can get past those limits if they just take a second, calm down, and focus on the task at hand.
Which is huge. And that's about learning how to control your mind and slow things down. And uh, there's tricks that I use for that I learned from mentors of mine, and it works. Not letting the mind run away, staying focused in the moment. You can even slow your breathing down and increase your air consumption.
Yeah. And you talk about mentoring, and I want to get into that. You know, you've done a lot of that. You've been out there on the circuit. You've been a teacher at FDIC and many other, you know, gatherings. You have authored a book. You have done, and you may be even working on a second book here, right? I mean, we have Firefighters from the Heart, which came out in 2006. But that was a reflection on some of your experiences, well, all of your experience, I believe, on Squad 2 and other experiences throughout the course of your career as well.
Correct, as well as I tapped into firefighters from around the country that to share their experiences to increase firefighter safety and for civilians, you know, awareness of the job that firefighters do.
Hmm.
And I do have a second book, Firefighters from the Heart too, real innovative title, right?
Yeah, but it's good. It works.
Yeah, and the two will be coming out. I'm changing publishers, and I want to give 100% of them to Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and allow them to you know, publish it. So look for that coming soon.
Well, an organization that I'm proud to be a member of as an advocate for Florida, the NFFF, and the mission and the purpose. And for you to be able to give back to that community in such a way is truly a blessing for the organization and the families, the community at large, our fire service community, because it doesn't just impact one, it impacts all when we lose. You know, we've lost over 70 this year. We were under 60 last year. Now, COVID played a factor in that, I know, but it just seems like we went from a high to an immediate low as soon as we transitioned into 2020. And I'm sure COVID affected the CFD. I have no doubt about that. I'm sure a lot of changes occurred inside of the organizational, operational side of things. And I'm sure you were probably witnessing that, even with filming, in Chicago Fire, that probably changed as well.
Sure, it's changed the world. I mean, all of us are dealing with the same thing. And if you want to keep your organization up and running, you have to go with safety precautions, uh, because ours is not a life and death industry. Ours is entertainment. With Chicago Fire, we not acceptable to have anybody, to suffer. So we're going to far extremes. We work with masks and face shields. We get tested 5 days a week.
Mhm.
2 days are the rapid 15-minute test, and 3 days are laboratory tests. So we go to extremes. The Chicago Fire Department, not quite that extreme, but they are using safety precautions, which I'm sure every department across the nation and really the world with this is tackling the same obstacles.
Absolutely. But back to mentoring, and that's something that you were quoted as saying it's one of the most important things. And I'm paraphrasing, mind you, but mentoring matters in the fire service. And, you went out of the academy into the streets, ended up on squad 2. You ended up rising through the ranks. You worked at the Chicago Fire Academy. You were eventually the chief of the academy, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I was.
And so there had to be a purpose behind that, because to go to training means that you want to mentor. That means that you want to lead the next generation coming in, and the following members after those generations. And I'm sure you had mentors walking in '79 that taught you the brass tacks about the Chicago Fire Department, what it meant to be a firefighter.
I did. I think anybody that succeeds in life and succeeds in the fire service, it's usually because they were surrounded by some good people, or they sought out some good people that assisted along the way. Nobody does this on their own, and it's good to remember that and be there for others. So yeah, from my early days on a job, or even before in my life, everybody has challenges in their life. I lost my dad when I was 15 years old, and
Hmm.
uh, I was a kid looking for a way. My very first mentor, other than school teachers, really,
Hmm.
I had some school teachers that shaped and molded my life. And a woman named Kathy David, who was a fourth grade teacher, I remember her today because she made me believe in myself when I was at a stage where I didn't.
Yeah.
And I had high school teachers, a guy named Jack Lord. Now I write screenplays, and I use their names to honor them, and things coming up, But mentors in my life, I had a boxing coach. I had a world famous coach, a world famous fighter. He had been a world champ, a guy named Johnny Coulon. He was my manager when I was this wayward teenager looking, trying to find a way. And he took me under his wing, which was amazing. I mean, he had fighters like Muhammad Ali used to work out in our gym in
One of
Coulon's.
the greats. One of the greats.
And they treated Johnny like he walked on water. And I was a kid, I couldn't see it, but I didn't understand why everybody treated him that way until I stepped back and I looked. But he just shaped and molded myself and me in so many ways. And that was my first really powerful mentoring. And he even taught me things that I utilize in the fire service. I was talking about controlling the mind and slowing your breathing down. That was something I learned from Johnny Coulon. He used that to prepare us for fighting. But is diaphragm breathing. It started
Yeah.
right with our breathing. Uh, he had a different name for it that was a little obscene. I wouldn't even use it on
That's
this thing.
okay. That's okay.
But he talked rough, but he got the message across. And to this very day, if I'm doing writing and I come back from a 12-hour day on the set, and I have to write something and get it off to LA for the writers in the morning. So I'm doing this work at midnight, and I'm tired and my mind is spinning from an active day,
Yeah.
I can slow myself down and get right into a focus by just a series of another name that's used in the military and in the fire service. You probably heard it referred to as box breathing.
Yes, I have. I have.
And it's just simply a small example would be taking a diaphragm breath, inhaling for 5 seconds,
Mhm.
holding your breath for 5 seconds, exhaling for 5 seconds, holding your breath for 5 seconds, and it goes on and on. Uh, if I'm at a fire and I have a mayday situation going or the world is spinning, I'm hearing things over the radio that I shouldn't be hearing,
Yeah.
things are turning bad, and I want to, and the mind starts to spin. Now I automatically do it. It's just a cycle that I do. I slow down and one or two cycles of breath, and I'm not stopping everything. It's as you're functioning, but one or two cycles and your focus goes like this to a laser focus, and it
Yeah.
really works. If you're the firefighter that's in the Mayday, if you're inside and you're trapped in Crapsville and you're running low on air, this focus, the same thing. I've utilized the same thing because I've been that guy inside the building.
Hmm.
Can figure out any situation you get in, you can figure how to get out. And I've done testing, and I've done testing with the smoke divers program. With that breathing, you can slow down your heart rate, you can slow down your air consumption,
Yeah.
a lot of great things. And this is from a boxing coach, so
Something as simple as learning how to fight, teaching you how to breathe. But when you think about it, boxers, they have to have the stamina. They're getting hits to the abdomen. They're taking the body blows, which is going to knock the wind out of them. And if they can't breathe, they can't fight, can they?
you're correct. And it helps focus and get you in the right frame of mind in the locker room before you take that walk to the ring.
I don't tell a lot of people about this, but my stepfather, Alphonse, I call him my stepdad. He was the closest thing I had to one after my parents divorced in 89, 90. And he was a deputy commissioner of boxing for the state of Florida. And so when
Nice.
he got his hands on me, he said, "Guess what? We're going to the ring." I'm like, "We're doing what?" He said, "No, we're going. We're going to go to the ring. Come on, get dressed. Let's go." I looked like a punk little kid at 14, 15 years old. And there I was in the ring and inside of one of the gyms in West Palm, and I was getting my butt whooped daily inside of that ring. It wasn't just down the bag. It wasn't trying to do all of the stamina building exercises, learning how to jump rope and everything. It was just I get in that ring with that headgear. I usually ended up on the mat. It was a hard lesson to learn, but it was a valuable lesson. Taught me a lot about losing and accepting loss in a lot of ways too.
Alphonse had a plan, Jason. It probably made you who you are today. It's one of the things that certainly shapes and molds you.
Well, I'm going to tell you that it's part of a bigger process, and I think you can agree. Um, when we have families, when we have a wife, we have children, we have people that depend on us, they depend on us, but they push us and they inspire us to do great things. And I don't give my wife enough credit because she catches hell more often than not from my frustration. And people often forget it's okay to get frustrated when you're in the middle of creating something great because it's not always going to go the way you want it. It's not always going to be the exact plan you set out to accomplish. But when you have the support of the people that love you, that you love, you can accomplish anything if you just listen to yourself and know that you have that faith inside of you and that support from them. And it's been that with Alphonse, my mother, my father, my grandparents, my sister, all of them. They have all achieved success on their own, but they've also lent, as well as my mentors, to helping me succeed. And I wouldn't have been able to get there without them and falling on my face a million times, which I still do today.
It's true, all valuable lessons, and we need that.
There's not enough of it out there. I think we talked about that earlier. I mean, we talked about getting promoted and the good and the bad side of leadership. And there are plenty of bad chiefs that do good on tests and they get promoted. And we're not going to single people out, but we're just going to call it what it is. I mean, I've said it before and you heard it earlier. The symbol on your collar, that's just what it is. It's a symbol. The character inside of you is what defines the leader. And there's a need to understand that, because the testing is just the process. It's what you accomplish after you achieve that goal that makes the difference.
You're right. People have to respect the rank or should respect the rank, but the respect of the person is something that you earn. And you do that by, the simplest form would be treating people the way you like to be treated and
Amen.
not forgetting that and utilizing your success as you move up through the ranks as an opportunity to look out for more people, more firefighters, the men and women of the fire service. We should never forget where we came from. Some people believe, and I heard people talk about this in classes, that you have to change. You
Mhm.
have to change when you're an officer because you can't be, Joe, their friend. You have to be Chief Joe, their boss. And I really believe you can be both. When the bell rings, someone's in charge. So once you make lieutenant, that's the thing that really changes. You get that first fireground promotion, and you're a company officer. The bell rings. You have more responsibility than just getting yourself home. But a good firefighter already encompassed uh, that purpose. They weren't just looking out for themselves, they were looking out for their team, and that was preparing them for that promotion. So then as you move up the ranks, it's just a bigger field that you have the opportunity to not only guide and lead and to mentor and to help them succeed what you've been lucky enough to succeed in your life, but more importantly, to bring them home safe
Yeah.
and and just treat them right, and you'll get that. You'll get respect. It takes respect to get respect.
It does. And when you think about it, and again, these are important considerations when you become a company officer. You start at Lou, and in some departments in Florida and other places, it's captain. They go from, driver to captain, right? Well, it doesn't matter. If you're a company officer, you're at the lowest level of human resource management in a sense. Okay. This is where you learned about Maslow's hierarchy through FO1, FO2. You maybe have your associate's degree. You start learning how to communicate. You start learning how to problem solve. You start learning how to manage people. And it's okay to say manage, because you're managing the lives of your crew as much as you're managing your own life and the activities that go on. And, I was talking to a guest not long ago about the importance of being able to empower your crews, knowing that when you give them the respect to make the right decision, that you don't have to manage them to a point of an autocratic level. You empower them to speak up, to give you guidance, to give you advice when necessary. The decision making falls on the Lou or the captain, no matter what, at the end of the day, but it doesn't hurt to give your crews that ability to be powerful, to feel empowered, and feel as a cohesive member of the crew. I think that's all part of human resource management.
Absolutely. It's your responsibility as a company officer to do that. We work in a zero visibility quite a bit of our time. We can't watch out for our troops, and we have to, by very nature of what companies do, we have to split up our resources as we're inside this zero visibility world. And you're counting on these people to act properly. So it kind of shoots you in the foot if you micromanage and pull your people around like a pack of ducks
Yeah.
and tell them how to think every time. We do have to empower them, and that will also prepare them for the next level. It'll prepare them to be future leaders on the fire department.
And see, that ties in with succession planning as well, because if you empower someone to be successful, and Gary Ludwig says it best, we don't want to motivate people. We want to inspire people, because if we motivate people, there's a good and a bad to motivation. You can negatively motivate someone and impact them in an adverse way, or you can simply inspire them. And it's usually through your own actions and doing the things that matter, being honest, being humble, reflecting on failures, acceptance of those failures. And those are character qualities that I think a leader requires. The greatest leaders that our nation has seen in military, in politics, they all have something in common. And I think humility is that thing. I think that when they are capable of saying, yeah, I messed up and this is how, I can move from this. You earn, garner, and will definitely attract more love, appreciation, and respect for your failure than if you try to cover it up, lie about it, or shift the blame.
Oh, that's true. You lose credibility. You lose your honor if you're the type that feels that you can never make a mistake and it's always somebody else. Your troops will see right through that, and you're not moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And so with that, I mean, you moved into a chief level role right out of company officer, if I'm not mistaken, right? Um, but that's where we need to pick up from. When you made it to chief and you added a new bugle to the cluster, what did you notice right off the get go, transitioning into that role, as far as being the responsibility level and then what you had to do to modify your own personal approach to day to day?
Well, as you move up the chain, the part of the job that we all love is the action, the crawling
Hmm.
hallways, and you lose a little bit of that, and you pick up a lot more paperwork and administration. But you can never forget the responsibility to oversee training and be involved with the troops. Some of the best bosses that I've ever had, one of them in particular, I can talk about a longtime captain that I had, Bill Burns,
Hmm.
just a big, tough, rugged, big-hearted guy that was a great firefighter and a great leader. And he was my captain for many years on the rescue squad.
I think you referenced him as a John Wayne type, if I remember correctly, reading
He,
about him.
he is. He's like a real life John Wayne type guy.
Yeah.
And Bill was not great at verbalization. You know, he would have a hard time ordering from a drive-up window, but he would inspire because of his actions.
Yeah.
That's how he would inspire. And if you didn't respect that and look up, I mean, he'd be the first person to work, the last one to leave, wouldn't put you in any dangerous situation without leading you,
Yeah.
and uh, he taught me so many things. But
But see, what he taught you was he was able to, in a sense, show you his strengths and his weaknesses. Okay. And you, in a way, could account and overcome his weaknesses by filling in that gap in some form or fashion by recognizing his strengths and utilizing them. And that's something a leader needs to also remember. You don't know everything. You can't do everything. You may not be the best communicator. You have to communicate. It's important as a lieutenant, as a captain, as a chief. You got to communicate. But if you're not great at it, there are ways and other things that people can bring to the table in your group of subordinates, of your peers, of your crew, that can help you rise if you're willing to just acknowledge those simple things.
yeah, Bill put together a team. He formed a team of guys that would run through a wall for him, and everybody rose to great ranks within the fire service and accomplished, some tremendous things. From one was the fire commissioner, one was our longtime union president.
Hmm.
All of them were bosses, and everything we learned was from Bill Burns.
And you consider yourself more of a labor-minded chief in a sense, which is not a bad thing. I mean, you never forgot where you came from, is where I'm going with that. You appreciated the value of every lesson you learned on that truck on the streets of Chicago to becoming a leader. The fact that you were engaged with local number two, and one of your good friends and classmates ended up becoming a president of local two, and worked with two different mayors, if I'm not mistaken, at least one for sure, Daley. I don't know if he was there with Harold Washington in that time frame as well, but at least Daley Jr. he was working around, and that was no easy feat to accomplish either.
Yeah, you're referring Dan Fabrizio, and he
Yeah.
was a longtime partner on Squad 2, became our union president, and he probably worked with probably three mayors along the way. But uh, another just a great success story out of Bill Burns' company.
Yeah. And see you, but I want to get back onto that because I think leaders need to remember the importance of staying connected with your crews. You did touch on that earlier, but there is an importance and that you valued everything. So you definitely want to share that with people. You want to give people the ability to understand that it's okay to remember what it's like to be a firefighter when you're a chief. It's okay to remember that things change when you get to that level. You don't have to change for the worse. You can acknowledge both sides and find that balance. And I think that balance is sometimes where we come to impasse, because it's not there when we can't, align ideologically with our needs and the chief's desires in a sense.
Sure. I think a good boss and a bad boss sometimes accomplish similar goals. I think people behave and do the right thing around the bad boss because they're a fear that they have a fear of what's going to come down if they don't do their job.
Hmm.
And I think a good boss, people will do the right thing uh, out of respect for that boss. They don't want to let you down. And myself, I choose that path. I never forget where I come from. I handle administrative responsibilities. I do always endear myself to the rubber meets the road people.
Hmm.
The people that are on the end of that hose line deep inside the building are the people of my main concern.
Yeah. And
Uh,
so you
yeah.
value that all. And I think that's an important message to share with everyone. And I love the fact that you are someone who will never forget where they came from. And I think in a way, when you think about it, working with the actors you work with, if that's the mentality and the chick they get, do you think that inspires them to perform at their best when you give them their guidance on set?
I hope so. Right with our first day of training with the actors, and now that's 9 years ago.
Hmm.
But we get new actors in from time to time, and I put them through the same training that the initial group had. I purposely started our training session in the hall of the academy. We call our wall of honor, and we have
Hmm.
a badge for every firefighter that died in the line of duty. And to date, there's 572
May they
firefighters,
rest in peace.
correct? And God bless them. And a lot of them are close friends of mine. A lot I was there when they died. But I started there with the cast for a specific reason, and it was all, they were just happy to be there. And then I explained what this pretty badge case really was, that these badges represented a chaplain or a fire chief having to ring a doorbell at 2 o'clock in the morning and telling some family that their loved one is never coming home. Uh, you could hear a pin drop. And
Yeah.
I told them how these are my heroes, our heroes, and that's who they represent. So we have to take it to heart. And they reference that from time to time, and they do take it serious, and they'll have a lot of fun on set, but they completely respect the fire service. I have several of them that go annually on our summers, on our off time.
Hmm.
IFSI, the Fire Service Institute at University of Illinois, they have a fire day, a fire college weekend, and they'll attend, and I'll have them crawling into fires with hose lines, and they want to be there, and they want to be there mostly to let the firefighters from different towns know that they respect them and they honor them.
In 2014, the Chicago Sun-Times printed an article, and it was about the creators of Chicago Fire coming to Chicago with the idea and walking into a few firehouses. And they were initially met with, the warm reception the firefighters would give visitors coming into the home. But thereafter, once the storyline was given, the Times indicated that the firefighters started cold shouldering or walking away and shared really no interest in wanting to be a part of that. And then they met you, and they met you at the fire academy, if I'm not mistaken, or you were actually at your office. You, the station that they showcase in the show, if I'm not mistaken, is your home that you retired from. And when they met you, you created, in a sense, 9 seasons now of a series that has focused on the life of Chicago firefighters. And that's something remarkable. I imagine that was no easy feat, though.
No, and I was part of the creative process that brought the show here. Uh, Long story, I had worked in the movie industry for several years, I believe about 22 years at that time, starting with the movie Backdraft.
Yeah.
So I was the tech advisor on Backdraft. I worked 6 months on that. This team that came, the Dick Wolf is our producer, and he sent two writers to Chicago to feel around and see if there's something there, see if there's a fire show. And he really didn't know what he wanted to do. So he took a couple guys that had written feature films, never
Hmm.
television, and just sent them here on their own. And I imagine when you walk into a firehouse, sometimes guys don't know how to treat you. You know, it's the media or whatever. What's your agenda?
Yeah. Standoffish.
And I guess after about 2 days, they called back to LA and said, you know, we're not feeling it. Uh, what do you want to do? And he was in the process of sending them to an East Coast city. They were going to go to Boston and on a different type of project. And it just happens that one of Dick Wolf's top producers at the time was a guy named John Roman,
Hmm.
who was a second assistant director to Ron Howard in Backdraft. So I had worked with him for 6 months, and he hears that they're going to be pulling out of Chicago. And he said, well, wait, did they meet Chick? Hold it. I have a friend there. Now, John Roman, I hadn't talked to in 22 years. And he tracks me down because I didn't have a cell phone, 30 years ago on Backdraft. So he tracks me down through my wife on Facebook, gets my cell phone number and calls me. And it goes like this. He says, Chick, it's Roman. I need you. And I'm thinking his voice sounded familiar. I said, like John Roman? What other effing Roman, you know? And it was like that. It was like we talked Tuesday. So he told me what he needed, and we set up a lunch meeting that day, and I met his guys, and we went to a nice Italian restaurant, had lunch.
Maggiano's.
Maggiano's. It was
Call it what it
Maggiano.
is. There you go.
And I was pitching ideas, literally pitching ideas on a bar napkin. And by the time we come out of lunch, we had a show. And we knew we had a show. And so that was a little over 9 years ago. And here we are.
And you've written several episodes, and now you're part of the production team as well as one of the consultants. And you were also, and we're going to close it out here soon, but Backdraft 2, which none of us in the fire service ever expected to see happen, and it did. And yet it was filmed in Romania, Toronto, Chicago. It had such a diverse backdrop. It was so amazing to watch it. And you brought back Billy, you brought back some interesting people, and you introduced new characters, and the storyline was quite interesting and how it evolved. Just an amazing thing what was done there. How did you get into Backdraft 2? Was it all tied into the Chicago fire aspect as well?
Well, yeah, it all ties in together. But I was brought into a project that was already completed. You know, the script at the time was already written, and it was a much lower budgeted than the original. Backdraft was a huge budget and all filmed in Chicago. This was filmed in Europe, in Romania, and in Canada, and a little bit in Chicago. And they timed it so it was on my off season and brought me in as a consulting producer on that also. But it was written already, so it's kind of like fitting a square peg into a round hole.
Sure.
And we had, we're up against the wall. We're in a city where I don't have my usual resources.
Yeah.
Firefighters that I can trust as background extras and things. So it was an experience, and I'm proud of what we did with it. And recently I just got a call. We're going to be developing a prequel to Backdraft, which what I like about it is they're bringing me in the beginning. So now I will be able to help write the script, and it will take place in the 1970s in Chicago. And it's about Ronald the arsonist, where he came from, and the rest we'll put together as we're going. But that's coming soon.
Call it what it is. Donald Sutherland, if he's in it, one of the best actors in that movie. And I think not just because he and Kiefer have done amazing thing as actors, father and son wise, but Donald Sutherland in that movie in Backdraft 1, then following Backdraft 2. I mean, if anybody could play an arsonist better, maybe Sir Anthony Hopkins could do that role, but Hannibal was his thing. But when you look at Donald, he played that role to a T, and that right there was scary good. And he might be back then. The prequel, this is going to be about him, huh?
I don't know, Jace, because it will. He's older now,
Well,
So
no, of course, but there flashbacks. Maybe I'm just saying, there's hope. There might be a flashback moment there. You
there is
never know.
there is hope. In the in the sequel, we did have Billy Baldwin, and
Yeah,
who's been a lifelong friend of mine, as most of the cast have, but including Ron Howard. But Donald Sutherland, I had never seen again after we filmed the original.
oh
And
wow,
next thing, I'm with them out in Romania,
yeah,
and I'm out there filming for about a week and a half when Donald is coming out for his first day. And the cast members are telling me in the morning, "Hey, Chick, your buddy's going to be here." And I said, "My buddy?" And they said, "Donald Sutherland." I said, "Well, he won't remember me. That was 20, whatever it was, 27 years ago."
yeah,
Donald was 80, 81, 82 years old now.
yeah.
So he comes out sharp as a tack. He and the director and one of the cast members are setting up a scene. The director's setting it up with the two of them, and he couldn't be sharper. He knows exactly. He has his own input for what his character would say and how he would act. And I was my plan was I was just there in case they needed me. But at the end of that, I was going to us and that we had met before, and about maybe a couple minutes into the setup, he stops and he's staring at me, and he says, "Chick, holy F, man, you got old." So
he, got, he,
you know,
he didn't forget you.
no, that's pretty amazing. Of course, I would remember him, but it was pretty amazing. He's just got that kind of a mind on him.
That's amazing, Chief. And you know what? That says a lot about the man you are, the 36 years CFD dedicated, retiring out Deputy District Chief, and then, of course, moving into the world of acting, the world of screenplay, working on dramas such as Chicago Fire. You've done an amazing amount of things in your career, a wonderful amount of things. I love being able to sit here and pick your brain, and I look forward to getting you back on here so we can expand that dialogue even further, because I want to delve more into mentoring with you and more perceptions and thought process and perspectives that you have to share, because I know they're there. And I look forward to reading both books. The first one I'm getting, the second one I'm going to buy as soon as it comes out. And if you guys haven't, Firefighters from the Heart, okay, it's on Amazon right now. Go check it out. It's there. And Chicago Fire Season 9 coming out in November. So I got to give a little shameless plug to that as well. So Chief, thanks for coming on the show. It was an honor to have you on for this past hour.
Jace, it's been a pleasure. It's really, I'm really impressed at what you're doing with your Can Man podcast. It's a cool way of giving back to the fire service, and you are making a difference.
That means the world to me.